Bam! MC is in the house. What's up, folks? My name is Justin Garcia, also known as Master Chim, and welcome to the Warrior Stream. I am here every Wednesday for about an hour. I take a topic, a deep dive, and have a good time while doing it. I'm usually joined by a good group of people, both men and women, who I appreciate spending the time and hanging out with me. And this week, like most weeks, a pretty interesting topic. As usual, we're going to touch on the controversial, the uncomfortable, in true MC style or fashion. But before I do that, let me just take care of some housekeeping. If you guys are watching on either YouTube or one of the Facebook channels that I'm streaming this to, in the description, you'll see, first and foremost, the link to get on my email list. I send an email out every day. They are free. And the Master Chim letter, which is the name of this email newsletter, is somewhere where I feel a little bit more freedom in being able to express my take on a lot of the topics that I tend to discuss. Like I said, some of them tend to be more controversial than others. Every once in a while, I'll have somebody opting out, reporting me as spam. In some cases, opting out, reporting me as spam, and sending me a nasty email. And that I've learned is just the cost of doing business. That's par for the course. I don't concern myself with people like that. I used to be really emotional like that too, so I don't really hold it against them. But the email is where it's at. So you can go to masterchim.com/email. What other URL did I just add? masterchimletter.com. That'll bring you to the opt-in. So if you're not getting those emails, go one of those. If you forget what I said, just go to the description. The link's going to be there. So who do we got on right now? What do we got? We got Jesse. What's going on, Jesse? You're on Saxa. What's up, darling? Good to see you. Aaron says, wore that shirt yesterday. Very nice. It's always funny when I get looks from people that know me wearing one of my gratitude shirts for the first time. And it's almost like they look at me like I got this like free shirt from somebody that gave it to me by accident or something. Like they have absolutely no idea what a lot of my philosophy is centered around. But gratitude is where it's at. And I'm glad you not only own the shirt, Aaron, but you're wearing it yesterday. Right on. Jamie, what's up? My man in Canada. Good to see you. All right. So let's talk about the topic for today. Corey, what's up? I see you chiming in over there. Stop apologizing is the topic for today. And if you guys have been following me for a while, which I know a lot of you have, you know that one of my earliest and most popular shirts, I probably should have wore it today now that I'm thinking about it. But it is never apologize for being a man. Two on Tom, what's up, brother man? Good to see you. And my never apologize for being a man shirt is probably one of my top three best selling shirts. One of my most popular shirts, which maybe that's the same thing, but it really is the earliest time I've shared formally this sentiment that I think people, specifically men, spend way too much time apologizing. And I don't think that the use of apologies today is something that men are getting necessarily correctly. And today I want to go over, I got three reasons. I could have made 20, but three main reasons why I don't think that apologizing is being used properly and what the consequence is for misusing, the apologies, right? In the email today, and I'm just going to read this, I shared, and this is what I usually do prior to one of these shows on Wednesday, that this morning's email, I send a little bit of a framework of what to expect during the talk. And I posed a couple of questions. What are the consequences of a sorry for a man sharing his beliefs? How does society hang him with it? Is an apology ever the investment men think it is? And it's with that in mind that I designed these three consequences, costs of misusing or prematurely, using an apology. Before I get into that, Big D, what up? This is my little brother, those of you who don't know. There's something to be said for when there is a reason to apologize. When are you supposed to apologize? Is there a reason to apologize? And the answer to that is, well, yeah. Yeah. And I think apologizing is, I would say, a request for the opportunity to rehabilitate a damaged alliance or reputation that was damaged by you acting out of character, usually through some sort of emotional driver. I lose my temper and I punch a hole in a wall, and it's not my wall, right? So I'm in a store, right? Here we go. And I punch this wall and I lost my temper. I heard something on the phone. I became an emotional little bitch. I punched a hole in the wall. I look at the owner who just sees me having punched a hole in his wall. I look at him. And if I give in any way a concern for my alliance with that owner, one of the first things out of my mouth is, I'm sorry. Like I did not mean to do that. So the appropriate use for sorry is when you truly are so undisciplined emotionally and you've acted in a way that has caused some form of damage to the reputation or the alliance of one of the people you're connected to. So the apology is the sort of lead in your process for reclaiming what was just lost by that cathartic emotional outburst. So there is a reason to use apologies. So I'm never going to say a man should never apologize for his actions. That type of absolute statement I don't necessarily agree with, because I think the apology comes out of a social tool. Now, what will I say? Maybe you should never have to apologize, right? Which is a different statement. If I say you should never have to apologize, the implication is that you haven't done the thing to warrant the apology from the beginning. And that sentiment I'm certainly an advocate of. But this idea that, we should never apologize, that's not something I agree with, right? I think there's a point where men specifically, not that women don't do this, but men specifically, they've developed this tool, this sort of social lubrication, whereby apologizing just becomes a way to manipulate the engagement of another person or with another person. It's something that is almost considered to be courteous, right? Or civil even. And usually one of the drivers is the person we're connected to has experienced some sort of friction that they didn't want. And we somehow offer an apology as a way to sort of mitigate their experience with that friction. I just found out I had cancer. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. I get it. I just don't agree with it. Because what is the alternative, right? One of my coaching students, right? Super sharp dude. He actually helped me with this phrasing for those characteristics or attributes that we sort of expect people to have. They don't get credit when they pursue them or they apply them because they're supposed to. And being that that's the case, we don't label these particular attributes that I'm referring to as goals necessarily, as if you achieved it. And he calls that category of attributes, he calls them, now I can't remember the label, permission to play, right? Those sort of permission to play attributes where it's sort of like, well, if you even want to participate, we expect you to have this bare minimum collection of attributes. That just gets you in the alliance, so to speak. But you don't continue to get credit for those things. So when I'm looking at people who are apologetic because one of their allies has gone through something that was unwanted, something that was, stressful or just negative or bad, I could say generally, the offering of an apology, I think is somewhat redundant. Maybe that's the word I'll use, Because, well, obviously nobody's going to be fucking happy about, hey, I went to the doctor today, he told me he has cancer. It's like, oh, well, that's not bad. Like, it's like whatever the approach is, I get that saying sorry has become this thing, but this is different from what I really wanted to focus on today. This sort of social lubrication for somebody else experiencing some circumstance that was unwanted and saying, I'm sorry to hear that. That's something I'll put as an aside for now, because maybe that's a functional social tool and, within the parameters of people's relationships as they are today. I'm not somebody that tends to do that, like I'll offer help, I'll offer, my resources, my value. I don't know if saying sorry is something that's necessarily valuable there. But again, this isn't the topic for today, right? So what am I referring to today? I'm referring to those times where men are acting in accordance with who they are. And they are pressured, expected to apologize for revealing them being themselves in that way, and then apologize as a result of that. So I think there are there are more than three reasons. I'm going to go over three reasons today. And I'm going to start with reason number one. When you apologize, and I'll add the premise, for being yourself. When you apologize for being yourself, that'll be the premise for these three conditions. One such consequence is the loss of authority and respect. To weaken your position of authority, one of the biggest drivers of that is to reveal to those people that perceive you to be a leader that you didn't mean what you said or did. In other words, you had represented yourself inaccurately. So there's an inconsistency when somebody apologizes for being themselves that could compromise their authority, compromise the level of respect somebody has for you, because suddenly your actions seem like a reflection of an unsure individual, maybe a submissive individual. I really like vanilla Swiss almond ice cream. Somebody says, well, vanilla Swiss ice cream sucks. It's not really that good. And my reaction is, maybe it's not the best. You're right. It does sort of, it's like that submissive posture may have motivations, behind it of manipulation and, rapport and all these other things. I've said years ago, the only excuse for using weak language is to manipulate the person you're communicating with, but there needs to be context there, right? So I'm not offering the context because that's an aside. It's really just there's a reason to speak weakly if we're looking to manipulate somebody, but to be apologetic sort of by default as a component of your personality and how you deal with people. It's very hard for the person in that ice cream example that replies that way to be looked at as a leader, to be looked at as an authority. I think an individual that has the mindset that who I am going to be needs to sort of pass through the filter and lens of what is approved of and accepted by those around me, sometimes even including the disconnected. That person will never be looked at as an authority. And if you are inconsistent in the presentation of who you are, it is very difficult for you to earn respect, right? I've talked about the term respect before, and to respect somebody, you can look at the makeup of the word, is to repetitively see the same individual. They present themselves consistently and therefore worthy of respect, right? So somebody who's apologizing for being themselves, very hard to do that. Let's see some comments we got here. Yarn Saxa says, I say sorry for everything all the time. I know it's not the same for a woman as it is for a man. It is not, nor do I think you say it for everything all the time. She continues, on some occasions, an apology is necessary. What I tell my kids is don't say you're sorry, just change the behavior. But when it comes to pattern, I have to rethink that route. And again, I would add to that the context of, well, are you apologizing for being who you are? Because here's another aspect, and I was discussing this earlier with on my mastermind call. There's something to be said for revealing too much, revealing who you are at a scope that transcends what is appropriate in the alliance. You get into an elevator with a man, and you have 30 seconds in the elevator, and he says good morning. You say, hey, how you doing? Good morning. And he says, beautiful day out. And then you go, me and my wife had sex this morning, and it was incredible. And after that, what we wound up doing, like, I'm not lying, but what the fuck am I going on about is what this guy's thinking. So there's something to say, I'm going to apologize for sort of overstepping my share, the scope of my share. It's entirely different when we're saying who we are within an appropriate level of scope and then apologize based on the reaction that we're getting, right? So I would certainly say if you're doing something where you warrant apologizing, you should absolutely change the behavior. But whether or not an apology is appropriate, I would say it really speaks to what you're going to try and do in terms of the alliance that was affected by the action that warranted the apology. If you make a mistake, I think saying you're sorry is a tool in the toolbox to sort of at least share the sentiment that you are sort of officially acknowledging it as a mistake, right? Jamie says, in Canada, an apology is even often a brush off that the person will get angry at you for not accepting, right? Yeah, I got to tell you, man, like, I've spent very limited time in Canada. I know a lot of Canadians, but even the Canadians that I know are sort of like a vetted bunch. Like, for me to meet a Canadian, he has to sort of go through certain circles socially that tend to vet them, which is atypical. But yeah, a lot of apologies up in Canada. A lot of apologies. Corey says, sorry as a way of offering condolences, completely different in my opinion, but I understand it doesn't do much to help. And I agree. And I agree with that sentiment. Sometimes if somebody is going to feel better, if you say, I'm sorry to hear that, or I'm sorry for your loss, then that's a tool at your disposal. I would say it sort of defeats the intent of saying anything if you don't want to make them feel better because of what needs to be said for them to feel better goes against some other disconnected position that you have, right? So I agree with you there, Corey. Two on Tom says, what are the things that follows anytime you apologize is that there will be a change in the future. So if you're apologizing for being yourself, you should expect yourself to change. Absolutely. And that gets at the heart of why the implications, the consequences of apologizing are often overlooked by men, I would say. So let's get to the second of the three consequences that I listed. All right. So number one is the loss of authority and respect. You don't want to be the person who is submissive, the person who presents himself as unsure of who he is and what he stands for, right? Very hard to respect somebody who acts like that. Very, very difficult, or certainly not a case for putting them in a position of leadership. So you're somebody who has a lot of sorries. Don't expect to be looked at as a leader. Second thing, reinforcing negative positions. So what do I mean by this? If you're somebody who expresses a sentiment that is congruent with who you are, that is valid on its face as far as you can tell, but are then pressured into apologizing for saying that or doing that, it becomes an argument against the perception of the act or statement itself. If I call somebody a tranny and and a transmission is sitting there and goes, I don't like to be referred to as a tranny. I prefer to be called a transmission. If I apologize for that, it becomes support for not using that term moving forward. So it undermines the perception of the very thing you said or did that you decided to apologize for. So somebody who rejects the validity or the right that you have to say or do a thing, when you apologize for it, you are helping them in their position to undermine the perception of that thing itself, right? So you don't want to be an individual who presents himself inauthentically, because that's a product of this, right? So if you're somebody who is saying something and then when you get a little bit of a backlash, you apologize for it. Well, it's like, well, who are you, right? Are you the guy that believes in that thing? Is that thing good or is it not good? What side of the fence are you on? Are you somebody that will change your position, your support of a position based on the feedback that you get? Again, you start losing control of your reputation or the authentic representation of who you are when you undermine it by apologizing for it, right? All right. Felix, what's up, brother, man? Good to see you. So the last of the three that I have, the weaponization of apologies. The weaponization of apologies. So what winds up happening today is you apologize for something. You're admitting you're guilty. Because you've admitted you're guilty, and Tom touched on this a little while ago, because you're admitting you're guilty, what winds up happening is you are seen as somebody that can be pressured moving forward. So you apologize for the one thing. Again, all of this, the premise I'm operating from is you're apologizing for you being you, right? When you apologize for one thing, you will be expected and pressured to apologize for everything else in the future that anybody wants to get you to apologize for. You should never look to appease critics, because the critics will drive the direction of who you are. It is weak to compromise your identity, the integrity of your identity, based on the feedback of people who have absolutely no skin in the game as to the value of your identity. I've gotten feedback from very good friends during the course of my adult life that has changed the trajectory of my life enormously, because these were people that were designated with a position in my mind as their feedback matters. Their feedback is valuable. I need their feedback. I need that observer's view on what it is that I'm doing, because I'm not going to be able to see it all. So when I have people who are going to give me feedback, and I'm going to use that and leverage that to modify, improve my efforts, the trajectory of my efforts, these people need to be selected for that. They need to be qualified to some extent for that. But everybody should have those people. But that says nothing of those that are outside of that wall of tribe. People who are giving you feedback with the only motivation to make themselves feel better or to help their trajectory or their tribe. We cannot allow disconnected people access to who we are because they've no skin in the game. Every bit of feedback that I've gotten from people I'm connected to is an investment to some extent for their own success. I like to surround myself with people that when I'm doing better, they're doing better. When they're doing better, I'm doing better. Well, when you're somebody who apologizes for who you are to people who are not connected to you in any of those productive ways, it becomes a weapon that will be used against you. Right? So the three that I listed, the three consequences or costs for apologizing for being yourself. It's number one, loss of authority and respect. You will not have people look at you as a leader if you apologize for doing what you do and being who you are and saying what's on your mind. Even if you've gone overboard by sharing too much, even if you've moved outside the parameters of what is appropriate at the scope of an alliance. As soon as you apologize, understand the effect on that alliance moving forward. You're not somebody they're going to respect. You're not somebody that they're going to ever look at as a leader. The second thing I mentioned, reinforcing those negative perceptions. When you apologize for saying something that you feel is true, that you feel is congruent with who you are, what you wind up doing is you wind up helping the case against it. If you apologize for it, well, it must be wrong. Maybe your motivation is to apologize just to salvage the relationship, just to make the person feel better. But just understand the consequence of that is that you've also added to the argument that that saying or doing what you've done or said is something that warrants an apology, right? And the third thing, the weaponization of those apologies. Disconnected people will use your apology as a weapon against you, right? So those were the three. So what are the motivations for this, right? This talk today. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the businessman Andy Frisella. Andy Frisella is a guy that owns a company called First Form. He's also the guy that popularized the workout challenge 75 Hard. Andy Frisella is somebody that from afar, I've looked at and seen as somebody who's, all right, this he's on the right side of a lot of positions. He seems to, I have a criteria for judging the value of a man, right? And this 9-point criteria, I've codified it now. It was much more organic prior to me doing so. But my process for judging the value of a man, Andy was somebody that always did the right thing, right? He always seemed to take care of his people, right? He always seemed to be connected in a way that he was looking to bring up the people around him. He was always somebody that was looking to create positive alliances. Like that was my reputation of his. Well, some time ago, I don't know if it was a couple of weeks. I don't know when exactly it happened, but he had a little bit of a venting session on a podcast he was recording where he was saying that he didn't believe that women should be police officers in the field. He was saying that, physically they could, he said something like, without the weapon or the badge, this is somebody who a man could punch a hole through their head or something. Some other little crass analogy he used or example to support his position. But basically, he was like, women shouldn't be there. They're tyrants. They're, every time I've had an interaction with a woman police officer, all she wants to do is try and use her authority to make me feel like a piece of shit. I'm paraphrasing something. And this was like a little bit of a rant he went on a podcast episode. And the aftermath of this was that a bunch of police departments that were in some way affiliated with his supplement company. I don't know how that happens, but they had some sort of thing, cut ties with him, publicly made statements. And then Andy Frisella's brother, who I think is the CEO of the company, wound up also distancing the company from his statement, saying, First Form doesn't support what he said on that. That's his thing, or whatever the thing was. And again, like, you can go look this up. I'm just speaking more conceptually, using this as a backdrop to discuss some of these points. But what happened after is Andy Frisella recorded I guess it was presented as a podcast episode, because I think it was like on the same feed, almost presented as another episode. And it was titled something like, "I made a mistake, I messed up, please forgive me," or something like that. And then what happened, I listened to the whole thing. It was like 12 minutes or something like that. And he went and apologized at a nauseating level. I never met Andy Frisella. I've never heard anything but good things about Andy Frisella. I don't even disagree with Andy Frisella, what he was saying about the female police officers. Like, I'm in agreement with that. But the apology was about as gay as one man could be by himself. It was nauseating. It was so utterly disgusting that I'm sure I spent 12 minutes with a fucking De Niro face on listening to this thing. Now, here's the thing. A couple ways to look at this. Number one, Andy Frisella is trying to reclaim the narrative. He's trying to undo what he did. His explanation was, I was fired up, I was emotional, I was thinking about specific experiences that I had, but I know that doesn't reflect the greater. He had his story tight when he presented it. I'm personally, I can only speculate this, I think it was complete bullshit. I think he believes exactly what he said. One of the biggest reasons I believe that is because I think it's true what he said, right? So he only has the truth on his side. Not that women can't be cops. They could be cops. They could be, very limited cops. I think women being police officers in general positions, is more of a condemnation of society than it is those specific women. I'm not mad at women for trying to be cops. Like, you go, girl. You get in where you can, right? Get in where you fit in. But I don't disagree with the statements that he shared. Of course, he presented them crassly on some long form podcast. Listen, been there, done that. I've been demonetized, thrown off of platforms. Like, I know all about this thing, but this is the price you pay. So he's trying to undo this. Why? Number one, I heard an argument that the company, First Form, employs like 500 people. So how dare he, compromise or put in jeopardy the livelihood of these 500 people? To which I say, fuck that. I am not going to compromise who I am because somebody else is making money off of me not being who I am. And I know what you're going to say, which leads me to my next point. He shouldn't have said it in the first place, not because he didn't believe it, but because it was outside the parameters of what was appropriate within the alliance of the people he was communicating to. Not that he didn't believe it, not that it wasn't true. It's just that he wasn't supposed to say it to all these people the way he did. It wasn't morally wrong, ethically wrong, but no, it was just offset from what his allies required of him. So they were like, nope, I'm going to opt out. Let's say you go to a restaurant for 20 years, your favorite restaurant, and you eat a steak every day, the best steaks. They got a bunch of other stuff, but they got the great steaks, your favorite steak. And then one day you go, you know what? We're not serving steaks anymore. We decided against, the killing of cows. We're Hindu or something like that. I don't know. They don't eat steaks, right? I don't think so. It's not a moral judgment, an ethical judgment. It's just, oh, well, I go there for the steak. It's like, if you're not serving the steak, I'm not going to go there anymore. So it needn't be anything more than just an offset in the alliance where it's like the heads of these police departments are like, dude, I got a lot of women here. Like, what the fuck are you doing? I can't have first form fucking posters up in the locker room. And you're saying that these women, like I can imagine like a first form flyer or poster in the women's locker room at the police department. You fucking suck, first form. Like that's the visual I get. Well, of course they got to do something about it. So by him saying that, well, yeah. So he should not have said it, not because he doesn't believe it, but because he wasn't willing to pay the price for saying it. I remember there are people, and I get this all the time, who, I'm not a Christian, right? And because I'm not a Christian, whenever I have a means of discussing it or a reason to bring that up, I guess now being one such reason, there's always somebody who, does the whole, I'm unfollowing you now. Like, just fucking go. Why do they always announce it? Right? Or I get the email, take me off your list. It's like, motherfucker, it is so much easier to press unsubscribe than it is to write me an email telling me to unsubscribe you. But whenever I say I'm not a Christian, for some people who have listened to me, I don't know for how long, couldn't have been long, but it's they go, oh, wait a minute, he's not a Christian. Oh, no. I can't follow this dude. And look, I get it. But it's a commentary on the offset and overlap of the alliance. Again, Two on Tom shares, if what you said was really you should always double down. That's right. Absolutely right. Or in one of my emails, I think I sent yesterday, I was tripling down, right? I had this whole thing. It got a bunch of people in an uproar about humility being bullshit. And yeah, it's a statement that slaps some people in the face when they hear it. Like, what are you talking about? I had one guy who sent me, I guess he used ChatGPT or maybe Google, probably ChatGPT, and sent me an email with every mention of humble and humility in the Bible. And at the end of it, it said something like, take me off your list. And it's like, just hit unsubscribe. The fuck is wrong with you? I guess it was also the Christian thing. So that was the humility thing and the Christian thing with that guy, right? But whatever it is, the one thing you could count on me for is being me. Years ago, I shared in an email an experience that I had, and I called it the best compliment I ever received. And it was one of my guys, Daryl, who still does coaching with me, who had followed me for some time, I guess, in the podcast that I had back then. And I had an event, or one of my PressureCon events. And he came and he hung out with me. And he said, MC, like, you are exactly in person who you are online. And I guess he was just making an observation. But to me, that was like the highest form of compliment. Anybody who knows me knows this is what you're getting, and certain forums, I could be a little bit more open, right? The scope of myself, I could discuss at greater length in certain forums, but it's never inconsistent with who I am, right? What's up, Monk? Monk says, always be loyal to yourself and your tribe. Absolutely. Two on Tom writes, Once he made that apology, he lowered himself in the eyes of other strong men. At the same time, did not elevate himself in the eyes of people he was apologizing to. Well put, as always. And I'm pretty sure that the think tank that went into him doing the apology, whether it was himself or, a bunch of people who were reading him the riot act, it was all about saving the money. And again, that's only a problem if we expect him to not have that alliance with us. You're just saying that because of the money. But meanwhile, in his mind, he's like, the only reason I'm fucking talking to you is because of the money. So why would I do anything that jeopardized that? This is a TRIBALNOMICS sort of landscape that needs to be observed. There's not this, he always needs to be this person to everybody. It's just, oh, okay, at my level of alliance with him, I fall in this category. And he treats this category of allies this way. So I should expect that. How many times have you seen people like impose on celebrities, whether it's entertainers or athletes or whatever, and there's a point where they'll walk up to you and I know I have some famous friends that will be we've been in social circles where, or in out and about in public, and people will, hey, can I get a picture, or they just want to say hi or acknowledge them, and celebrities, I'm sure, are people who just walk around going, hey, how you doing? Hey, and it's like I couldn't fathom living that way. But then when you have a celebrity that just can't be bothered, like, hey, I'm with my kids, like, get the fuck away from me. The first thing you'll see is plastered is, this celebrity, curses out reporters, curses out paparazzi, refuses to sign autograph for little kid. And it's like, yeah, the celebrity forgot to maintain the perception of the ally that all those people think they have in him. But we should all know that's not the case. We certainly shouldn't expect it. Maybe there are cases where there are celebrities who truly love getting approached by people all fucking day. I don't know if how that's possible, but it's not me. Maybe there are people that are like that. But as people who are on the other side of that alliance, we shouldn't expect that of them, right? So I think it's just really a matter of just understanding, well, who is this person supposed to be good to? Is he good to them? The criteria for that being, well, who's his tribe? Who has he obligated himself to, to be good to? Who amongst his allies has invested in him with the hope, inclination, or expectation of some sort of positive return on an investment? Those are the people he needs to prioritize helping out. So when he does that apology, which was about as gay an apology as you can get, it's like, yeah, I get it. So do I agree with him apologizing? Well, again, there's context that needs to be added to this. Like, I wouldn't fucking do it. But I also don't run a multi-million-dollar company fucking like he does. Like, there are certain rules to the game you're playing at that scale. Right? You can watch certain celebrities act one way when they're comfortable, act another way when they're in front of powerful people. Like, I've seen a lot of people who, I shouldn't say this. I'll clean it up. I know a lot of people that thought they were very tough until they met serious people. And being exposed to serious people, they realized just how not serious they were. But in their little, their little aquarium, they got to get a little bit spoiled with acting certain ways. We need to understand that there's always going to be context to the causal relationship to what our actions produce on the other end. So should he have apologized? Well, I don't know. You'd have to ask him. For me, like, I'll be honest, like, I wasn't very much connected to him anyway. I'm going to give you another example. right? And I'm just reminding myself because I spoke about this morning to my guys. Ian Smith. Ian Smith is the guy, if you guys remember, who had a gym in New Jersey, who defied the government, the governor specifically, law enforcement, what have you, the orders to close down his gym for COVID. He had a partner. He and his partner were like, fuck you guys. Like, we're not closing down. They chained up the gym. They went like the next day and like removed the doors from the gym. It was epic. I remember having a talk with my guys at my school because my school was open, but we ran it like a lot of schools did, like a lot of businesses did. We did it like a speakeasy, like you slide the thing open. What's the password? Like everybody was biding their time. And I told the guys, I said, listen, Ian Smith is a fucking hero. How do I know he's a hero? Why am I saying he's a hero? Because you can go on the news every night and watch him fight the fucking dragon. And I said, right now, it's not my turn, my time, or my inclination to be the hero here. I'm not going to be the guy that's on the news. I'm not going to be I don't have the temperament for that. I have to remain functional for 4 kids. I'll be honest. I didn't believe in my ability to do that, to be the guy in the news every day, to be the guy, getting locked up, bailed out, getting sued, fucking millions of dollars in fines, all this different. I don't know if I was that guy. So right from the beginning, I remember putting Ian Smith on a pedestal and going, this guy is a fucking hero. Right now, Ian Smith's taking one for the team. And to this day, I say that. You hear, or you could even observe, and I follow him on social media. I've never met him before. And you see how his life has been turned upside down by this. Like he's still paying the consequences of those decisions that he made way back during COVID. And deserves all the support anybody can give him for it. Because in my mind, like I said, he's a fucking hero. The other day he makes a video, which turned me onto this whole thing. It was this Ian Smith video that I first saw. And he said that when he was going through all that, even though the gym was open, they weren't allowed to charge anybody because that would defy certain laws. And I get it, like he was open, but he was not open for business. He was letting people use the gym, whatever. He couldn't charge for gym memberships because that would, warrant certain consequences. Whatever, he was playing a game. But he was at a low point, and he had said something like, I looked happy on the outside, confident on the outside, but inside I was fucking struggling and I was crushed. And I believe him. I expected that. When I saw he positioned himself that way, it's like, this is why heroes are heroes. Because they're going through some shit none of us want to go through. Well, he said when he was at his lowest point, he was messaged by Andy Frisella. And Andy Frisella basically was like, I'm going to help you out. I want you to be a sponsored, ambassador for my brand, whatever, and like cut him a check. He didn't say how much money because it doesn't matter, but he basically said that Andy Frisella cut him a check. Didn't know him, didn't owe him anything, like didn't expect anything for it, because one of the things that Ian said in his video was, how am I, going to give you value? Like I'm controversial, like I'm battle. And he was like, don't worry about that. Like, I just want to support you. And so he said, Ian Smith, that's who Andy Frisella was. And he'll never go against Andy Frisella because when he was at his lowest point, Andy was there. I see that as yet another positive thing to say about Ian Smith. Ian Smith ain't bailing on his people. His guy hooked him up. Ian Smith needed that help. He took that help. He benefited from that help. There's something that I call a self-imposed debt. And it's the drive that an individual has to reciprocate investments made in them by allies. And the higher that is the way that I measure loyalty. It's how does one self-impose a debt based on the investments in him by his allies. Ian Smith is the top of the food chain when that's concerned. But that still says absolutely nothing for how gay Andy Frisella's apology was. Andy Frisella sounds like a solid dude. He sounds like he takes care of his people. He sounds like, he's been there for people who've counted on him, and he's capable. So when he's there, it means something. I don't deny any of that. I don't know him personally. I don't know a lot about him. I haven't really followed his stuff. I know what 75 Hard is. I know I've heard of First Form. Everybody on the internet fucking trying to get a sponsorship from them, right? So I understand that. But I also know that Andy Frisella thought he could be a little bit more authentic publicly than it turns out he can be. And then rather than saying, well, this is just who I am, I didn't mean to offend you, but that's my position on it. Maybe I could have said it a little more politely, but that's my position on it. This is my feeling. If you don't like it, don't listen to my podcast. Like, he could have said all that, but he didn't do that. He left like a 12 to 15 minute apology that was just disgusting. Again, it doesn't mean anything to me in terms of the value of Andy Frisella. Takes care of his people, does what he has to do. There are plenty of people out there who, when they're in good positions, they help people effectively. But what I could also tell is, okay, Andy Frisella is good right up until the pressure reaches a certain point. That affects whatever him making that video affected, the video that he got in trouble for, whatever the consequences or the impact, the reaction of him saying those things, whatever that was, like that we already see as a line where he starts to turn to somebody else. A lot of people, were like, well, he's got all the employees. He's got them. Listen, you could rationalize it all you want. I get it. Well, obviously there's a reason why he did it. I don't think he made that apology because he's a cunt, because, he's scared of standing. Like, no, it's just that the cost was too expensive. Whatever it was. I don't know what it was. And I think we just need to understand that is what apologizing does. It now has these second order effects that maybe we didn't anticipate when we're just trying to undo what we did. It's like, oh, I broke this thing. So then you apologize, trying to fix the thing you broke. Now realizing that by apologizing, you broke a whole bunch of other shit in the process. Right? Corey writes, apologizing for and suppressing truth is leaving us with nothing but weakness. Yeah, there's a point where if a man moves in circles that disallows him from being himself, he has to become a smaller man. Imagine I was in a pool of water, and the pool of water is 4 feet high. And I'm above 4 feet, for the record. I'm 5'5", right? So I'm almost 1.5 feet taller than the water. If the air suddenly becomes poisonous, right? A poisonous cloud passes through the air, I need to go underwater. But who I am is not somebody that could exist in the water, which means I could hold my breath for a spell. But at some point, if I'm going to remain who I am, I need to put my head above water and breathe. If I can't ever put my head above water and breathe again, that means I now have to change who I am to be able to exist and function and live underwater. But whatever that version of me is, it is not the natural version of me that I started with. So when you have an individual who apologizes for components of his very identity in order to maintain those alliances, in order to maintain access to those tribes, to stay in those circles, he has to either create a facade that's not sustainable, that's holding your breath, or it's compromising and becoming a smaller individual, cutting off that aspect of your identity that doesn't fit or isn't accepted by the circle you're running in. Again, not a sustainable way to build a fulfilling I think everything just shut down and went back on. All right. I think I got my last sentiment in. What do we got here? Johnny Groove says, I fucked up just showing up. Yes, you did. Little Goose, what's up, dude? Good to see you. All right. Well, hopefully you guys heard what I said. I thought it was pretty epic. and then everything shut down and then restarted. But we're good to go. Let's end it there. I appreciate you guys hanging out. Got a good group today. Bunch of comments I always appreciate. If you guys are not getting the email, you guys should know already. Go to masterchimletter.com, opt in, and make it happen. I'll be here next week. You guys know it. I appreciate you being here. And as always, brothers and sisters, pressure to power.